All right, let's dive in. Today, we are tackling two of the most incredible, most mysterious creations from the ancient world, Stonehenge and Carnac. We're talking about massive structures built from absolutely colossal stones, way before anyone had even dreamed of modern machines. So how did they do it?
I mean, really think about that for a second. Your job is to build something huge, using stones that weigh more than a truck. But you have zero cranes, no engines, none of the tools we take for granted. How in the world do you even start? Well, that is the exact puzzle our ancestors solved thousands of years ago, and we're going to dig into how they pulled it off. So, there's actually a name for these kinds of incredible structures. They're called megaliths. Today, we're putting two of the most famous megalithic sites on the entire planet under the microscope to see what secrets they can tell us about the brilliant people who built them.
And that word, megalith, might sound a bit fancy, but it's actually super simple. Mega just means big, and lith comes from the Greek word for stone. So a megalith is literally a big stone. Pretty easy to remember, right? Okay, so first things first. To really get what a huge mystery this all is, we need to understand the sheer scale and the design of our two main sites. We've got Stonehenge over in England and the Carnac stones in France. Right off the bat, you can see these were two very different projects. Stonehenge, as you know, is that one single, iconic, perfectly arranged stone circle. Carnac, on the other hand, well, it's this sprawling collection of over 3,000 stones, all set in these long, straight lines that just go on for miles. Think of it like this. Stonehenge is a single, focused temple, while Carnac is like a massive army of stones, frozen in time. And to really get your head around the scale of Stonehenge, get this. A single one of its big sarsen stones weighs about 25 tons. That's the same weight as 4 huge elephants. And they didn't just move one, they built an entire circle of them. It's just incredible. And then you've got Carnac. The number here is just staggering. With over 3,000 individual standing stones, it is the largest collection of its kind anywhere in the world. Just try to imagine walking through these fields where giant stones stretch out as far as your eye can see. Okay. So we've seen what these things are. Now for the really big question. How on earth were they built? Because this wasn't just piling up a few rocks. This was a massive engineering project that would be a serious challenge even for us today. Yeah, let's talk about the logistics for a second. Some of the smaller stones at Stonehenge, the bluestones, actually came from a place called the Preseli Hills in Wales. That's a journey of over 150 miles. So how did a prehistoric society with no wheels for transport pull off something that massive? The journey itself was absolutely epic. First, they had to somehow cut the stone right out of the mountain. Then, it probably took hundreds of people all working together, using wooden rollers and sledges to drag them across the land. Some experts even think they might have floated the stones on giant rafts for parts of the journey. It was this multi-stage, incredibly difficult process for every single stone. And what this shows us is an insane level of planning. This was not random. They had a clear 4-step plan for every stone. Quarry it, transport it, raise it into a pre-dug hole using nothing but sheer manpower and ropes. And then at Stonehenge, they took it a step further. They had to lift those massive top stones, the lintels, into place, probably using some kind of complex wooden scaffolding. Just wild. And this is where it gets really cool. The builders of Stonehenge didn't just stack the stones on top of each other. No, they carved them to fit together perfectly, using a technique from woodworking called a mortise and tenon joint. It's basically like ancient Legos. They carved a little bump, a tenon, on one stone, and a hole, a mortise, on the other, so they would lock together. This shows incredible skill and a desire to build something that would last forever. So we've looked at the what and the how. But that leaves us with the biggest mystery of all. Why? Why would you dedicate millions and millions of hours of labor to build these things in the first place? I mean, seriously, think about it. This wasn't a weekend project. Building these monuments took generations of people. The level of dedication is just mind-blowing. So there had to be a profoundly important reason for all this effort. What was it? Well, archaeologists have a few big theories on the table, and the real answer is probably a mix of all of them. At Stonehenge, the perfect alignment with the rising and setting sun on the solstices suggests it was a giant calendar, super important for ancient farmers. But it was almost certainly a religious temple too, and we know it was a cemetery for important people. But maybe the biggest reason was that it acted as a huge community hub, A project this big forces different tribes to work together, building bonds and showing everyone who is in charge. It wasn't just a structure, it was a statement. You know, for centuries, before we had all this science, people came up with their own amazing stories to explain these places. One legend says the wizard Merlin magically flew the stones for Stonehenge all the way from Ireland. And in France, people used to say the Carnac stones were a Roman army that a local saint turned into stone. These stories just show how deeply these monuments have captured our imagination throughout history. Now, to really, truly understand these sites, we have to zoom out. These incredible stone structures weren't just built in the middle of nowhere. They were the absolute centerpieces of a busy, sacred, and complex landscape. Here's the key thing to get. Thinking of Stonehenge as just a circle of stones is like thinking of a capital city as just one single building. It was the heart, the center of a much, much larger complex, buzzing with activity and filled with other important structures. And that surrounding landscape was incredibly busy. The whole area is covered in ancient burial mounds called barrows. There are massive earthworks, like a long ceremonial pathway they call the cursus. And using cool technology like ground-penetrating radar, archaeologists have even found buried evidence of other huge circles that were made of wood or stone that we can't even see on the surface anymore. So how do we know all of this stuff? Well, the answer is archaeology. You can think of archaeologists as being basically history detectives. They use science and super careful analysis of every little thing they find, from a tiny piece of pottery to the chemistry of ancient bones, to piece together the story of these people who left no written records behind. So when you boil it all down, what's the big takeaway? These monuments are so much more than just a pile of old rocks. They are a direct physical connection to our ancestors. They are proof that thousands of years ago, people were organized, they were intelligent, and they were driven by powerful beliefs to achieve absolutely incredible things. And that leaves us with one last big thought. For everything that we've learned, we know for a fact there are still more secrets buried beneath the soil at these sites. Every new discovery adds another piece to this giant puzzle. So the real question is, what amazing thing are we going to discover next?